This is episode 32 of 10,000 Africans podcast. I am your humble host, JD Tarpon. Remember to subscribe to 10,000 Africans podcast on iTunes or wherever you listen to your podcasts. Today on the show we have Kamil Olufowobi from New York City and Nigeria. He is the founder and CEO of MIPAD. And if you don't know what that is the most influential people of African descent and recognized by the UN as the decade of international people of African descent, 2015 to 2024. And this is the man who's spearheading it. Welcome to the show, Kamil.
Thank you, Jay, for having me. And I am definitely honored to be on your podcast. Thank you for, doing what you do. We love you. We appreciate you.
Man, thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate having you on, and I am a fan of what you're doing. Let me just say that off the bat.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. I mean, this is me giving my gift to the betterment and the upliftment of Africa. And just to be clear again, my name is Kamil Olufowobi, CEO, founder of the most influential 100 company. And we are currently working in support of the United Nations to promote the International Decade for People of African Descent, to be observed from the years 2015 till 2024. You see, not a lot of people know that the United Nations declared 10 years as a decade to recognize the contributions of people of African descent worldwide. Did you know about this before we met, Jay?
I knew about you last year before we met this year, so yes.
So you are one in a million.
Exactly.
You are 1 in 10,000 Africans who knew about it.
Yes,
so
sir.
What we did was to, present to the United Nations the importance of letting the world know about it. And what keeps me personally up at night is that we have already lost 3 years out of that. So it's sense of urgency to all people of African descent worldwide that we should make the best of this opportunity to get the world to recognize our contributions and give us access to justice and also development of our people and our continent. These are the 3 pillars of the decade: recognition, access to justice, and development.
Yes,
so
sir. Yes, sir.
It is our time. And I believe through platforms like yours, we are able to get the word out.
Yes, sir, man, and I'm happy to be able to do that. So let's talk about you as the person, because it doesn't exist without you. And so we've introduced you, we've introduced what you're doing, but that doesn't tell your personal story. Now you are Nigerian, you live in New York, I guess back and forth, and you're working on this project. But what is the story, Kamil, that has led you to this point in your life?
My story is very similar to the work that I do, and that is why I do what I do. You see, I grew up in America as a first-generation American, born to Nigerian parents who migrated for educational reasons to the U.S. in the 70s. You see, throughout my life, when I am in America, Americans call me, oh, that African boy. When I visit Africa, they call me American. So you see, throughout my life, I've had this dichotomy of being these two people, of being an African in America and being an American in Africa. And what I discovered is that these two sides of me never really understood each other. There was always that inherent conflict between these two sides. So you see, this conflict is what I have lived with and what led me to do what I do today, which is to bring together these two worlds to understand one fundamental truth. You see, the dignity and the respect that we're seeking as a people, we will not get it until Africa becomes the pride of the world.
Yeah.
So it is imperative for these two people of the same mother, of the same blood, of African descent, to come together and lift up Mother Africa. So that is why I do what I do today. I am simply the messenger, and my life experiences is what led me to create a global list of the most influential people of African descent. Every year we acknowledge 200. I know it says 100, but it's 200 people. 100 of them are based inside Africa. 100 of them in the diaspora. Kind of like, who's your counterpart doing what you're doing? And we do this 200 honorees in 4 categories: in politics, in business, media and culture, and humanitarian and religious endeavors.
Yeah, man. I love what you're doing. And, you know, this is such a huge task that you've decided to take on, because essentially over a period of 10 years, you're bringing together about 2,000 people.
You got it.
Yeah, that is incredible. And I've seen sort of a glimpse of behind the scenes, and I know that people are thinking, you know, oh yeah, you go to Africa and then there's North America, but there is literally there are people in every single part of the world. Every corner, every nation we are planted, and that is what for me is so exciting about this platform. I have learned so much about the African diaspora, about places where we are and many of us do not know. Through this experience, I've learned so much of what's going on. In Mexico, for example, people of African descent who have lived there for many centuries, 200-300 years, are not legally considered citizens. Wow.
Or not recognized by the Constitution in Mexico.
Wow.
When you start to hear about the plight of Afro-descendants in Brazil, a country made up of 51%, 100 million people of African descent, yet they are marginalized and disenfranchised. Their civil liberties violated. You think you know what it means to be black because you live in America or in Canada? Wait till you get to some part of the world.
Yeah.
It would astonish you.
Yeah.
So this decade, in essence, is to help bring the world's attention to this and to get governments to recognize and to put in frameworks to tackle and combat racism and xenophobia. And Jay, I got to tell you, this is why I love you, man. You live in Canada, and Canada is one of the countries that have recognized the decade.
Yeah.
About 15 plus of them, but only Canada has done it at the highest levels of government. So it has become the gold standard and what we're pushing for the rest of the world to do. Because at the end of the decade, by 2024, what we're looking for is legislation, government laws put in place, right?
Yeah.
To make it unlawful for you to violate the human rights and civil liberties of people because they look like you and me, Jay.
Exactly. And I'm very proud that Canada has taken the lead in this because, you know, what you're doing, sometimes when I talk to certain people, I have to always explain when I say African, I mean, you know, everybody everywhere that's of African descent, because I think we have this whole thing of if you're African from the continent, and then you're African American or black, and it's different, and you're Brazilian and it's different. And the reason why I love what you're doing is the fact that it's connecting all of that and saying no, we are all Africans, and that is for me, like you said, once we come together and see how powerful we are in terms of influencing government, in terms of influencing policy, moving technological advances across, and we can gain that respect across the world. That is how we move forward. Talking about MIPAD, man, I know the work that you're doing. I know the impact. I've seen firsthand the impact that it's having. I've seen the influence that it has and the influence that people of African descent have. But I'll say in plain English, what is the work? What is the value that your work is adding to the continent?
So good question, and thank you for asking, and thank you. Remember this, I cannot do it alone. I am only here as a messenger to tell. Remember, these two sides of me who just don't seem to, understand each other, right? To unite and come together to uplift Africa, right?
Yeah.
So the goal is to transform Africa. That's the fundamental goal, right? That's the end goal. And the way we plan to do that, like I said, is to unite these two parties. And the conflict that exists between these two parties, I believe a reconciliation first needs to happen, which is Africa standing up and acknowledging, our role in the past. And the way we make up for it is simply by Africa standing up, for the diaspora.
Yeah.
So imagine when your prime minister in Canada made that announcement. There were 5 African presidents and the African Union standing behind him.
Yeah.
That sends a very strong message to the diaspora that Africa is standing up for you. We failed you before because we let the Europeans take you, right? But now we are here to fight that fight we didn't fight then.
Yeah.
We're here to fight it now. And here's my argument for why Africa also needs to stand up. You see, the African Union considers the diaspora the 6th region of Africa. Mm-hmm. And it is defined as a group of people to come and, bring their money and their expertise to help develop Africa. See, the question the diaspora would ask after centuries of, having been disconnected from Africa, what has Africa done for me lately? Yeah. For me to bring my expertise and my money to come and develop Africa. So this is the question that I, through MIPAD and the work we're doing, is asking Africa. To say, Africa, what have you done for me lately? You want me to come to Africa, bring my money, bring my expertise. What are you doing to protect my human rights and my civil liberties here in the diaspora while I am in the plantation, here working, right? Yeah. I can get shot because I look like you.
Yeah.
So next time when you are on the diplomatic table with Venezuela, with Brazil, with Germany, with the United States or the UK or Canada, when you're signing those diplomatic deals, those trade agreements, you should bring it up and say, hey, I hear of human rights violations of people that look like me in your country.
Exactly.
I would greatly appreciate if you take a look into that, as we sign, these trade agreements or we sign bilateral agreements. I think this is where Africa can stand up. Africa is no longer the weak cousin. Africa is in a new position to stand up for its diaspora. And I believe that once you do that, symbolically, the diaspora will start to stand up for you and then jump in to the work that needs to be done on the continent because they have the money and the exposure.
Absolutely.
So, to answer your question, what exactly are we doing? It's to help uplift Africa.
Absolutely. And what you're taking is such a big task, but you are. There's no better person placed to do that. Now, in what you've been doing so far, what has been the biggest challenge that you faced? Doing this work and trying to transform minds.
Okay.
Yeah.
The narrative to convince the diaspora that it is time to jump into the business of transforming Africa, and the narrative to help Africa see that it needs to stand up, right, for its people, and for me, that is the difficult part, to get these two sides to see eye to eye. And again, like I said, when I'm in Africa, they call me American. When I'm in America, they call me African. You see, that dichotomy my whole life I've lived through. So I understand it, and I'm doing my best to try to unite these two these two sides to quickly get it together and start working together for one common goal.
I think you put it perfectly, right? Where you have even people that were born here, who have had their families here for generations, still get told they aren't Canadian enough or they aren't American enough, but they also aren't African enough. Being on the continent, because I grew up in Liberia, went to Lesotho for school and everything. I didn't understand the concept of the difference or the struggle until I got here, and there is that realization.
Absolutely.
There's that realization that
Absolutely.
No matter where you come from, as long as you look like this, you're all in the same boat.
Absolutely. As long as you have more melon than they do, right? The society has defined it, right, based on the doctrines of this white supremacy, right? That white is right and black is not.
Yeah.
So no matter what we do, like I said, until we uplift our continent, before we can start to change that narrative, the sooner we start to realize and understand each other's experiences, right? The sooner we can start to better understand each other and start working together. Scientists would say the way to make an invention, because racism is an invention, to make an invention obsolete, you have to create a new one.
Yeah.
So therefore, we have to create a new world order. A new world order where people would not be judged based on the color of their skin, but instead by the gift and the talent that they're carrying, by the content of their character.
Yes,
right?
sir. Yes, sir.
So that is why MIPAD's vision is a world driven by excellence. A world where, as long as you're the best version of yourself, right?
Yeah.
You will be given all the privilege.
Exactly, and the opportunities. Yeah.
Absolutely. It is who is the best man for the job,
exactly.
not who looks the best for the job. Let me tell you another interesting experience doing this work. You see, when I start talking to people of European descent or non-Africans about what we do at MIPAD, in search for excellence worldwide, and I ask them to send us nominations, what I find is that for the first time, they are forced to think of excellence and African descent in the same statement.
Exactly.
And it changes the narrative.
Yep.
Right? Because this is something that it counters the current narrative.
Yeah.
Because their experience has not necessarily been affiliating African descent with excellence. So Kamil and MIPAD show up and telling them, start nominating, people with African descent of excellence worldwide. And, they're forced to think about it and look around them and see that excellence does exist. Within people of African descent. It is there.
Yeah.
We've just not been given the opportunity to highlight it.
Exactly.
And that's what MIPAD is on the road to do.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Almost at the end, Kamil. Our final question, man, and I'm excited about this answer. If you had 10,000 Africans at your disposal with expertise in every field, what would you do?
Wow. That is an exciting question. And it ties to the theme of your platform, right? 10,000 Africans.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so here we go. Here's what I would do. I would ask that these 10,000 who are, I believe, the icons of excellence, right?
Yeah.
To let their light shine, right? The first thing I'm going to ask is for them to become the best version of themselves. To inspire, yes another 100. Each of them inspiring 100. That would give us 1 million, correct?
Yep.
Okay, good. So that is what I would do, actually. Thank you for asking that question. And now you've planted a seed in my mind. So we get 10,000 Africans to become the best version of themselves, let their light shine so that they can ignite another 100 people, right? So they mentor and support another 100 people to become the best version of themselves. Now we have 1 million. And we repeat that same process, right? Until we get to the 1 billion people of African descent worldwide and get them to use all of that gift to uplift Africa and make Africa the Wakanda we saw in Black Panther. And for me, that is what I would do.
Yes, sir. And before I even go to our rapid fire questions, let me say, this is where 10,000 Africans and MIPAD cross paths. Because what you just explained, I think this is why we connect so well. Because that is the sole purpose and the vision of why 10,000 Africans exist and why it was started. Absolutely.
Yes, it takes a select few, just a few of us. Just 10,000 of us can create 1 billion.
Yep.
Right? That will get the work done. But we have to start small and then we build.
Exactly. Yes, sir. And before we go to our rapid fire questions, which is just, fun stuff, how can people find you? How can people connect with you and stuff like that?
Absolutely. Thank you for that. So across all social media platforms, you can find us at hashtag is at MIPAD. That is MIPAD 100. So at MIPAD 100 across all social media platforms. Our website is www.mipad.org. That's mipad.org. And you can email us at info@mipad.org. And MIPAD stands for Most Influential People of African Descent.
Boom. So rapid fire questions, man. Here we go. What is your favorite book?
My favorite book of all time is the Bible.
Good one. What is your favorite Nigerian dish?
Oh, come on. That's easy. Jollof rice. And we got a better
okay, you know what?
Jollof rice
Okay, you know what? Jollof rice is off the list. Let's try that again. What's your favorite Nigerian dish?
Okay,
besides jollof rice.
I love pounded
yam. That's good. I made it too easy. Okay,
you can start a fight just mentioning jollof rice.
I know.
And the Senegalese who invented it are looking on.
They're just like what? Oh man. Okay, here we go. Last question.
Let's go.
Let's see. Before I ask this question, who's your favorite African revolutionary?
My favorite African revolutionary of all time would be Kwame Nkrumah. The father of Pan-Africanism, and one of the visions I have on this movement is to redefine neo-Pan-Africanism. See, Pan-Africanism today, I feel, is dying or has died down, and we need to revive that. So yes, Kwame Nkrumah. I mean, there are lots of greats. Patrick Lumumba, even Mugabe in his heydays, was a revolutionary. And of course, we cannot forget our brothers and sisters on the American side, the Martin Luther Kings, and of course Malcolm X. But of all time, if I had to pick one, it would be Kwame Nkrumah. And if I had to pick two, of course, it would be, interestingly enough, I actually love Malcolm. I really do. And the combination of Nkrumah's vision, connected and tied into what Martin Luther King stood for, and also the radicalness of Malcolm X, I think will be a great new way to define and establish, the neo Pan-Africanism.
You know what? I'm glad I asked that question. I'm going to leave it there. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for coming on the platform, Kamil. It has been amazing.
Thank you, man.
Having you on, man.
Absolutely. It was great to be on. It's my privilege. It's my honor. And let us continue this work in service.
Yes, sir.
For Africa. And my final word would be, there is no competition in contribution. If we are all contributing towards the greatness of Africa, then what's all the fuss about? Let's get to it.
Exactly.
Stop all the competition and all the divide. You know, it works to their advantage, not to ours. So let's get together. Let's do this for Mother Africa.
Let's do it. Let's do it. I love it. I love it. I love it. Thank you for listening to another episode of 10,000 Africans podcast. Again, remember, please subscribe to 10,000 Africans podcast on iTunes or wherever you listen to your podcast. Rate us, review us, share with your friends and family. Help us reach out there. Thank you so much. And again, remember, have a wonderful day.